ahead of us. I want to bring this discussion back down to our homes, our families. I know a lot of us are concerned about the internet when it comes to our children. I have two children. One is a young adult in college and one is a teenager still in high school. And they're on the older end of Gen Z, and social media and internet addiction it was just coming up as I was raising new kids. And I think if I had known what it was going to become, I would have made some decisions a bit differently. And so as an older mother, excuse me, I'm not an older mother. I am, as a mother who's on the other end of this parenting thing, to spit that out of my mouth. I'm not an old woman. I'm an incredibly young woman with older children. But as somebody who has some experience, I'll say that, some wisdom behind her, I really feel strongly actually about sort of being a warning system for parents coming behind me. So I think you're going to want to hear this discussion. You have kids, you have grandkids. I want to talk about what is coming up in Congress regarding the Kids Online Safety Act. And to help with this discussion, I'm bringing in our guest, Carl Szabo. He is the Vice President and General Counsel for NetChoice, and he's also a professor of Internet Law at George Mason University's Scalia Law School. Carl, hey, welcome to Stacy on the Right. How are you doing this Friday night?
Doing well. Coincidentally, my son is at sleepaway camp, and we just dropped off my daughter with the in-laws. So my wife and I are finally going to have a nice dinner without having to worry about a babysitter this weekend.
Well, that's actually very exciting. Anybody who has kids knows that that's a big deal. Well, I really appreciate then you taking a few minutes of your freedom out to talk to us about this issue. And congratulations to you for getting some time together. That's a big deal.
Yeah, thanks. And it's no bother because this is an important issue. It's something that is near and dear to my heart, both professionally and personally. And, you know, if I or you can provide one or two tips to parents, that'll make it absolutely worth the time.
Yeah, I agree, actually. So let's start off. Maybe you can give us a quick summary of the Kids Online Safety Act, because you've been talking a lot about that. And it did pass the Senate and now goes to the House for discussion. There's a few concerns in it, but one of the reasons that this bill came up, Carl, is because some people are concerned about the influence of social media on our children and also about the data collection. That's always an issue. And so this is something that is going to have to be batted around between government and voters, probably in perpetuity. But give us the lowdown on this Kids Online Safety Act, and what are your initial thoughts about it?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. The question of how do our kids use social media is an important question. It's a new challenge for parents in the 21st century. You know, it's not like you or I could go up to our parents and ask, hey, what did you do when I first wanted a cell phone? Because, well,
Right.
They didn't really exist when we were growing up. But our parents dealt with different challenges, right? You had the advent of the internet, or you had cable TV. Before that, you had, I like to talk about how you had Tipper Gore going to Congress complaining about rap music. You had Elvis Presley on Ed Sullivan. Every parental generation has had their own new technological challenges. And what we have seen since the dawn of man is parents have always found a way. Otherwise, frankly, we would not be here. So I come at this from a initially very optimistic position of parents will figure it out, and parents are figuring it out. And that's kind of what we are seeing. And I can get into that in a minute, but what is the Kids Online Safety Act? Well, that is what you would expect from government. Whenever there's a problem, government rushing in and saying, don't worry, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And anyone familiar with Ronald Reagan knows that those are the 8 scariest words that you want to hear. And the Kids Online Safety Act is exactly that. One of the biggest challenges for every parent, regardless of technology, regardless of age, is deciding what is best for their children. What is best for their children? What's best for my children is going to be different from what is best for your children. And you mentioned how you have a freshman in college and a kid in high school. If you were to look at just based on age, they probably have many friends, some of whom some content is appropriate, some of whom content is not appropriate for your kids. So deciding what is best for our kids and our families is a highly specific question for every single parent. It's questions that every single parent has to answer all the time. What the Kids Online Safety Act tries to do is tries to push parents to the side and come in with a new bureaucratic entity called the Kids Advisory Board, which will be created by this law, and they will decide what content is appropriate for your children. They will decide what content is appropriate for my children. And if we as parents can't even decide what books we should have in our school libraries, there's no way that a bunch of bureaucrats and ivory tower think tank experts are going to be able to decide what's best for the children in some place like Terre Haute, Indiana, a place that they've never been to. And so that's one of the things that terrifies me off the bat, is the idea that parents are being replaced with government under the Kids Online Safety Act.
I think it's really interesting. I mean, I could have told you that I didn't like this bill just from the name, because anytime if it's a nice name, if the government gives something a nice name that sounds, the Online Safety Act, then it's literally the opposite. I live in California and we passed Prop 47, which is responsible for all of this crime. People across the country probably know of it by now. But it really just emptied our jails and made a lot of felonies legal. And the name of that bill, which was just a bill to empty the jails, is the Safe Neighborhood and Schools Act. There's not the word neighborhood or schools is nowhere in the bill. But so anything that says, oh, we're going to keep your kids safe, you have to be really careful about that, especially, Carl, considering what we have been up against censorship wise since at least 2020, but certainly beginning in earnest in the Trump era, 2016 and beyond. I saw Rand Paul saying this recently too, that this is really just a Pandora's box of censorship. That the intentions from some people might be good, but this opens up some other powers that could be extremely dangerous.
Absolutely. I mean, once again, looking at something that is considered to be harmful. So Kids Online Safety Council is the name of the government entity that will be created, and it will be filled with, civil society and government bureaucrats. And these are the same groups of people that say using the wrong pronoun is harmful. And what type of censorious actions could we expect from these groups on using the word Mr. or Mrs.? Would they deem that to be, quote, harmful? Let's presume that a 15-year-old in Nebraska is trying to get more information about firearm procurement because they want a rifle for gun club. Are they now suddenly denied that access to that information? Are they suddenly put on a watch list as a result of that internet search? And you can then go and look into things like minors looking into issues about what should I do with a teenage pregnancy? And they're only given one side of the discussion, not all sides of the discussion. And that's exactly what we are seeing here. And we haven't even gotten into the fundamental privacy problems and real dangers for everyone over the age of 16 who also is harmed by this legislation.
Right. The legislation purports to solve this issue of data collection by big tech, and it just basically makes the government the entity procuring all of our data. Of course, it's ridiculous. But let me ask you this, Carl, because as I said when I opened up our interview, I have struggled with this with my kids, and I definitely see and I'm not alone. Most parents are in my corner on this. We see the harmful effects of social media, of the internet. Some of us feel really helpless against it. It's really hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube. And so if you've got kids that are my age, they've been using the internet for a while. And it does seem like there's a lot of garbage on there. There's a lot of bad practices done in bad faith on behalf of big tech aimed at our kids. Is there some type of government solution here? Does the government have a role here? Or is this purely a social issue and should only be handled at the social level? I think parents like me are really confused.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's tough. My wife's a child therapist. So when it comes to a lot of these issues, I find myself oftentimes, quote, cheating off her homework. And one of the things that we're dealing with as parents right now, I'm honestly having this debate in my household. My son loves to bike all over the neighborhood with his friends. And once upon a time, you would say, "Hey, Jimmy," my son's name is not actually Jimmy, but you'd say, "Hey, Jimmy, when you get to Tim's house, you give us a call to make sure that you got there safely." And that's the way it used to be. Well, my wife noted most people don't have landlines anymore. So how is my son going to be able to call me to tell me he got to Timmy's house safely if there's no landline? Well, he'd have to go find Timmy's parents and use their cell phone. Okay, that's a challenge. Similarly, what if my son wants to leave Timmy's house? Then he has to go to Timmy's parents and call us to pick him up, and that can be really awkward. So even something as simple as letting your kids ride their bikes to their friend's house and asking them to call when they get there suddenly becomes a lot more complicated in the age of cell phones and no landlines. So suddenly, our family is now thrust into the debate of, do we get him a device? Do we not get him a device? What type of device do we get him? And without even penetrating the question of social media. So there's that first question. Then when you get to the issue of social media, is there a role for government? Absolutely. But the role for government is not to replace parents. Not to replace parents. It is to help parents. And don't get me wrong, a lot of the lawmakers who voted in favor of this legislation probably have the best of intentions. But one of the worst things you can do is tell somebody that they can't do it and to just give up. And that seems to be the message coming from a lot of politicians and a lot of people in power is, hey, don't even try to keep your kids off the internet. Don't even try to keep your kids off social media. There's no way. It's inevitable. So just give up now. And I say, I think parents are incredibly powerful. I think parents are incredibly strong. And when we put our minds to something, we can tell our kids no. So one of the things that we have been seeing, which is wonderful, is we've been seeing the growth of parent-created, parent-organized groups like Wait Until 8, where parents will get together and decide, hey, we're not going to let our kids have devices till they're this old. We're not going to let them on this social media service. And they do that as a collective. No government, parents doing the hard work. Similarly,
And I think
you've got
that's
things
what it comes down to. Honestly, yeah, sorry. That's what it comes down to, probably in all aspects. Anything that we're confused about, or when it comes to parenting or just developing society, anything really, that it's the idea that that it's all nuanced, and there are considerations to be made. And but these are really, it all boils down to the family, the home, the structure. So every problem that government's trying to solve is a problem that's come up because the foundation of a stable society we're missing a lot of bricks from it. So you're asking government to do a lot of what parents should do. I agree. A lot of this is, this starts in the home. What about things like predatorial things online, leaving kids open on social media or on the internet to pornographic images or straight up porn or predators online? I know Florida's been flirting with they have this age limit for social media, but that's sort of the honor system kind of thing. What about protecting kids from predators? How does the government um, respond to that?
So that's exactly the role of government, is to do law enforcement and put bad actors behind bars. And one of the most depressing statistics that I am glad to come across comes from a group called Stop Child Predators. And as you can imagine, there's a very simple goal: stop child predators. It turns out that less than 1% of all reports of child sexual abuse material even get investigated.
Wow.
Less than 1%. That means 99% of reports of child sexual abuse goes uninvestigated, let alone prosecuted, let alone somebody behind bars. So that is terrifying. That means all these bad actors can act with impunity and don't even have to worry about somebody knocking on their door asking what they're up to. So there is legislation in Congress today to help rectify some of these blind spots in law enforcement. And this is not a failure of law enforcement. This is a failure to provide resources to law enforcement. There is something called the Invest in Child Safety Act, which is in Congress. And that basically would give law enforcement more resources. Let's presume that they're able to double their efforts. That means at least 2% of reports of child sexual abuse get investigated as opposed to 1%. And that will help thousands of children who are currently being abused, and the abusers go unprosecuted.
Well, that's a great point too. Again, it just feels like a lot of this, even whatever, if you're looking at the border or anything, a lot of this is like, let's enforce the laws we already have. Let's make it more difficult for the predators to come after our kids. Some of this stuff is just stuff we have to deal with. Social media is here to stay. The internet's here to stay. But we definitely need to be thinking about things on a root level, base level. What we don't need to be doing is creating new government entities. That's literally the last thing we should be doing. All right, Carl, well, I'm going to let you go so you can enjoy your dinner with your wife. But before I let you go, can you tell people how they can find you online and more about the stuff you guys are doing over there at NetChoice?
Yeah, absolutely. You can, like, follow, or subscribe, since we're talking about social media, to me on X. I am at Carl Szabo, CarlSza, B as in boy, O as in October. You can follow the work that my company is doing, NetChoice, at NetChoice, NetChoice, or please visit our website, netchoice.org, where we go into further detail on some of the efforts that we're doing to help shield kids from bad actions and really help provide parents with tools and resources.
Well, thank you so much. You're doing the Lord's work out there. We really appreciate it. Just good luck to your kids out there as they navigate the internet, and enjoy your time off tonight, your parental leave, so to speak.
Will do. Kids are a true blessing, but always a challenge.
They're very much a blessing. Thank you so much, Carl. Have a great weekend.